Palpatioke area to the sites near the Indian River Lagoon and the St. Lucie Inlet. There are 13 different public launch or stopover sites along the trail, and there's also a 3.6 mile trail spur that runs between Atlantic Ridge and the Palpatioke County Preserve area. There is a map that comes with that. I'll get that to you tomorrow, Carla, the whole map for the trails. Our next Water Ambassador class is scheduled for June 4th at 8:30 a.m. at the Elliott Museum. Currently, we have 0 people signed up, so if you know anyone who's interested, please get them to sign up. Right, there's some flyers over there too, I think. That's all I have today.
Is Martin County gonna speak out against the Army Corps spokesman saying that this is not Lake Okeechobee water being discharged on us? Because that canal was not bone dry, it's 26 miles. It's combined with Lake Okeechobee water that we're being dumped on. And when the Corps spokesman says that it's not Lake Okeechobee water, it's a lie.
There was a question that was asked during the periodic scientist call on Tuesday at 2 o'clock. That question was asked. The Corps' response was that it was when those little blips of water that were coming out were during blockages, correct, Mark?
That's what he said.
And prior to that, any discharges that were coming from the lake were for water supply. They were looking desperately for water supply for quite some time until the rains came.
How come Martin County, the estuary, the time that I've done the South Fork, the last 20 years, every year gets worse and worse, coming out of our basin, coming out of the Martin County basin. Okay, like right now, it's all fresh water all the way down to the inlet.
Right.
And it's not like Okeechobee water, it's our basin.
What's
It's
mixed?
it's mostly C-44 basin runoff, but then the other basins
That's our
also.
basin.
Right, that's our basin.
That's an unnatural
Yeah.
basin, Jim. That wasn't a natural basin.
I know it wasn't an natural basin, but I'm saying why it's gotten worse every year.
More development.
Best practices.
More
It's not
development.
development, it's not coming off the development, it's coming off the farm. It's coming off the agricultural area. And why has that gotten worse every year?
Best practices.
I don't know that. Paul?
Went from citrus
Paul,
to
yeah.
There's no practices.
I realize the water department, I mean, they have best practices, but the best practices are killing us.
Yeah, exactly. They don't work.
There's no such thing as best practices when it rains.
Diane or maybe Mark, right now they're constructing the C-44 reservoir in SDA. Can you talk about when that's expected to be done and what that would actually do in an event like this?
I talked to Beth Kaminsky the other day. The STAs were scheduled to be completed this June. I believe that's now being pushed off to December or the spring of 2019. The reservoirs are not going to be complete until February of 2021. But the contractor they do have a new contractor, and he is moving along with the reservoir right now. It's expected, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, but once the reservoir and the STAs are in full operation, about 60% of just the C-44 basin runoff it will take. It will not take any Lake Okeechobee runoff at all. It will only take C-44 basin runoff. Yes, ma'am.
It's a lot of question. We've already started the spring pretty wet, and the meteorologists are suggesting that we might have a really, really active hurricane season. Is there like an emergency plan if we end up with like back-to-back deluge of water into the areas? There's like, is there a plan if it gets moved out?
Do I look like the deer in headlights?
Blow your pants legs up.
That's what I feel like.
Run away.
I don't have an answer to that. We might want to talk to the Corps.
The Army Corps of Engineers likes to wait until there's a tidal flow coming in on a high tide during a hurricane, so they can release us at the same
Right.
time and flood everybody out. There you go. That's what they did in 2004, 2005. Right, Bob?
That's right.
You got flooded out.
Hi Diane, thank you very much. Your first point you had said there were 3 signs that had not yet been placed that are going to be placed at those 3 areas of concern. What are those signs going to say?
They normally say, that they advise you no contact with water.
And those were Layton Park?
Sanskrit Park, Layton Park, and Roosevelt Bridge. They are going to resample today. It'll take them till, I don't know if they'll have results. They should have results by Friday, knowing whether or not there's still high levels from the samples that we
Great, so
took
that
up
new
Monday.
paddle trail, we can stand on shore and look at it, we just can't go on it. Right.
I know.
Thank you.
What about the beaches?
We haven't heard of anything on the beaches, but we are keeping our eyes and ears open. If you hear anything, see anything, say something, call us, whatever you can do. Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Diane. Paul, you want to, a couple comments, tell us about the lake?
Thank you.
He's my hero.
I'm Paul Gray, I work for Audubon, Florida. I'm in our Everglades Restoration Program. One of my primary responsibilities is the lake. And when you work on the lake, you work on the estuaries. I was out there today, and of course it got really deep last year. And we stopped and threw the anchor out in an area that had a whole bunch of underwater plants like your seagrasses, the submerged aquatic vegetation. There was nothing there. And when I pulled the anchor up, they were there, but they were all dead. They were laying on the bottom. So the lake's really taken a big hit. Diane mentioned that it's 13.6 after this system this weekend, and it'll probably go up to about 14, which is where it was beginning of 2016 when the lake got really deep and we had the really bad algae bloom releases. In contrast, last year we were at 11 feet, and when Irma came in, we were only at 14. That was in September. We're gonna be at 14 on June 1st probably. So it's really a bad spot for the lake to be, it's really a bad spot for the estuary to be. We can't do anything about that right now, we're at the mercy of the weather. And it gets to building C-44 and building the reservoir north of the lake and south of the lake, the E&A reservoir, and until we get these projects done, this is our life. So I wish I had good news for you. Yes?
How much, what percentage of the SAV is gone? I mean, was it?
Okay, there's like 150,000 acre marsh, and about 50 of that is SAV. We may lose almost 100%. So the other part of the marsh, the shallow water marsh, is still there, and it's okay. But that outer zone that has the bass fishery and that productivity is gone. And as you guys know, when St. Lucie loses its seagrasses, you lose all of the fish and shrimp and everything, and they can't come back till the seagrasses grow back. So you have to wait for that, and then they have to be recolonized. So this is multi-year impact. So even though it happened quote unquote last year, we're going to be in trouble for a while. And so we'll do that.
But sugar would be fine.
Can I ask a question about fish kills? Do you anticipate a ton of fish kills from these flooding incidences? We're already seeing active bird activity with fish on the surface of the water.
Yeah, we probably will have fish kills in canals and rivers and some of the smaller water bodies. Okeechobee tends to be big enough that it circulates enough that we don't really have any fish kills in it, even though the water can be just horribly polluted in the middle. We can expect some heavy rains like this.
What's the status of the SBA area south of the lake?
The SCA south of the lake actually, they're in recovery mode too, because they got too deep last year, and so they lost a lot of vegetation. And then when Irma came in, it blew over a lot of vegetation, and you know, they have to have healthy plants to strip nutrients out of the water. So the SDAs south of the lake are beleaguered. They're trying to get them recovered. And they have more control over them right now than most other places, so hopefully they can get them up and running again. Because if the SDAs aren't functioning, they can't run water south, and then the system gets bottled up and we don't have any option but to dump it east and west. But if they can get it functioning again, we have options to send water south, and that's another question they're working
So, next up is Charles Runyon, Rivers Coalition Defense Fund.
I was going to start off talking about the lake levels. Just, we need to keep that in mind. We're about 2.5 feet over where we were last year. And you know what happened with Irma hit last year. And the other thing to keep in mind is
Charles.
we've already had the prediction of a heavy storm year this year. So the only thing we can do as individuals is try to pressure the water management district to send as much water south as they can. I know Mark and Gary have been doing this over the last few years, and it does help. Everything that they can send south, when they can, winds up not coming here. Second thing I wanted to mention tonight was Port St. Lucie has recently been looking at the canals that feed the North Fork because of the problems in the North Fork. And they got Brian LaPointe to test for the human markers, to verify that, what we really need to do is convert from septics to sewer. And they started with the areas closest, the older areas in Port St. Lucie, and they found what they expected, a lot of human markers in areas that had a lot of septic systems. Then they went out west further to the newer areas in Port St. Lucie, St. Lucie West, and Tradition. And they tested, and they found exactly the same thing, even though those areas are all on sewer. There's the same level of human markers in the canals flowing through those areas. And there are no septic systems contributing to them. And the last step they did is they went to the western border of the city. And beyond the western border of the city, there's nothing out there but agricultural land. What used to be grove land and is now a lot of sod farms, turf farms, and a little bit of additional sugar. And they tested the canals back where they start in the agricultural areas, where there are cows, not people. And they found the same number of human markers in the canals.
The Milorganite, right?
So unless we get really smart and stop taking the sludge from our sewer plants or the processed class AA fertilizer, and stop spreading that on agricultural lands that feed our canals, we're just gonna continue killing the lagoon and the river at the same rate as we are now. So if you really wanna help the lagoon, you really wanna help the river, you gotta get to the local elected officials and let them know. Central sewers really are a good idea, especially where you've got old septic systems that aren't working. But the conversion doesn't solve a problem with our waterways. As long as you take that stuff and dump it out on the farmlands that feed our canals, that wind up in our rivers and in the lagoon. Yes, ma'am?
Where is the right place to dump it?
Burn it.
There are a number of ways being developed now where it is similar to burning. The other thing is to get it far enough west so that you're beyond the canals that are being used to both irrigate and drain on farmlands. But what we have to give up is this idea that, gee whiz, if we go to central sewers, it's all, it solves everything. It only solves things if we properly deal with the sludge.
Charles, has Dr. LaPointe actually come across and said that it's not our septic tanks?
He was quoted in the paper last week when they came up with these results, and he was one of the guys who came up with the result. And they asked him, what does that show? And he said, gee whiz, it's a surprise, we don't know.
Who's he working for?
Harbor
State
Branch.
line.
Yes.
Harbor Branch.
Charles, and I don't think you brought up, but the research that Orca did also brought up that the reusable water contains a lot of these hormones and human tracers as well, and also the phosphate and nutrients that are going back. So that needs to be addressed, and it seems that we really need to look at the waste disposal treatment plants. They need to be upgraded to a tertiary system because they're not taking out the nitrogen, which is the key, as well as the phosphorus. But the nitrogen is the key, and we're only going to be playing with ourselves until we start taking those out instead of sending them back into the fields or back into the water as discharge, as secondary water.
Or using it as gray water, fertilizing our lawns and having it run off.
Exactly.
The good news is though, that is happening. All of the new plants have tertiary processing for the gray water, but they haven't solved the sludge deal yet. The older plants need to be upgraded. But we have the solution and we're moving towards it with the water. It's the sludge that's killing us, and it's killing us because we're not recognizing that we're sending that back to
And I
ourselves
just-
in the canals.
I just want to make everyone aware, there's a bio-waste symposium over at the Wolf Technology Center on June 8th. And this is only talking about this subject. So if you're interested in hearing, it's going to be from 8 o'clock to 4 o'clock, and you must register. So you go online.
You go on, it's the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council is putting it on. It's June 8th.
Thank you.
Thanks, Darrell. Go ahead.
I just want to correct something, Paul, that there's not, in the waste, in the reuse stream, there's not pharmaceuticals. At least we're not that I'm willing to stand up here and say at this point. The biggest problem is the ammonia levels, which are the nitrogen in the reuse water. And in Vero Beach, they use reuse water in a lot of their parks. They've quit fertilizing completely, and they don't have a problem at all. So, you know, we have to look at the both streams, whether it's biosolids or water. But just to not quote Orca as saying that there's pharmaceuticals in the reuse water, because we haven't tested for that yet.
Can I ask you about fertilizer bans? Fertilizer bans are in place by the local ordinance,
Right.
by local ordinances from here to after hurricane season, right?
Correct.
Yeah, but,
June 1st.
but how does that enforcement happen?
There's no enforcement.
There is no enforcement.
Well, that's the problem. If you have a law and no teeth in it, what good does it do?
But it's like, it's best management practices.
If you fought the battles trying to get the laws in place to start with, you would have never got them in place if you'd have put the enforcement element in. The education component was brought along with it. There's a lot of us that went through this battle to start with, and we argued for some arm of enforcement, be it as mild as could be, to at least get some voluntary compliance to get started. Any reductions is a help, but you would have never got any of your bans in place if you'd had an enforcement component.
So this is soft law then, right?
Very soft.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just being honest with you, but
No,
that's
I
the way
mean,
it
we
was.
have to
I fought
clarify.
the battle, and
Okay.
you'd have never got it past any of the county commissions if you had an
Okay.
enforcement arm in it.
So,
Mark Perry, Perry will give us our local issue and estuary update.
Sure. Well, as you all know, it's been raining pretty hard and steady here for more than 7 days. This was the first day without rain. It's unbelievable. I have a rain gauge in my place in Palm City. I had 17.8 inches over the last 7 days. It's only a 5-inch rain gauge, so I have to keep dumping it and recording it. But it is incredible how much it is just went everywhere. And as was mentioned, it's in the local basin that we're getting all this runoff. About 7 days ago, the canal levels in C-44 Canal, they're right now at 13.0 feet, but they were at 14.6 feet, about 7 days ago. And all of that water runoff is coming into the C-44, again, not from the lake. The lake was down at 13.5. So it wasn't coming from the lake, but all the runoff around the C-44 Canal is about 116,000 acres. There are 31 subbasins that drain into that, and that creates all of this runoff coming into there, mostly citrus and agriculture. The same thing is true in C-23 and C-24 up to North Fork. And yesterday I came by the Gordy Road structure, which dumps in all 10 Mile Creek into the North Fork. And I came across Fort Pearson into there by Midway Road. And as you cross Midway Road right over the North Fork as it crosses, it was totally flooded almost up into Midway Road. All of Wake City's park, everything was underwater completely. And when I came down the turnpike south from Fort Pierce, on both sides of the turnpike, the Gordy Road structures on that side, the west side, but on the east side, all of North Fork floodplain was totally flooded, almost right up to the turnpike. I have never seen the floodplain up the North Fork of the St. Lucie that high, and it overtopped the structure at Gordy Road. You couldn't even see the structure. So the gate readings they're having about 800 to 1,000 CFS are not true or valid because it's overtopped the structure. It just isn't valid anymore. So, but we are getting about 2 billion gallons a day from the S80 structure, again, all from the local basin, and about 2.7 billion gallons a day from C-23, 24, and 10 Mile Creek. So all of those artificially basins, they're not our natural North Fork or South Fork watershed. Remember, that's the tidal basin that used to be the old watershed, about 210,000 acres. Now we've expanded that with these agricultural canals, about 525,000 acres of watershed. And it's, again, not the lake, but all of this local watershed, just like Jim said, is still running in. And all of these 186 sub-basins that dump into the main canals all come into this watershed. And that's why we're getting all this very, very turbid water and polluted water that's covering the estuaries. The Roosevelt Bridge salinities have dropped. They were 25 parts per thousand. Remember, the ocean's 35 parts per thousand and freshwater is 0 parts per thousand. This was at 25 about 7 days ago, dropped down to 0. Out at the Prairie Bridge, out in the outer estuary at the A1A Bridge, it was at about 32 parts per thousand 7 days ago. It's dropped to 0. So now the seagrasses and the oyster reefs and things, they can't tolerate a duration. Remember, it's all about not just fresh water, but how long is it going to be here? So a normal storm would come through and you get freshwater conditions like we have in the estuary, and it'd be gone after a couple of days, the storm's passed. Well, we've got more and more rain and rain and rain. We're gonna get this tropical system with more rain coming. It's just gonna last for a longer period of time. And again, oysters can only tolerate 28 days of zero salinity. Seagrass is up about 15 days of zero salinity. So we're really after whatever remnant oysters and seagrass we have, it's really in jeopardy. Just before this rain event started, we were out in the field and saw oyster spat settlement, which means the juvenile oysters, because remember, April and May is the spawning season. It's springtime. And not only the oysters are setting on the other oyster shells, but now they're even more vulnerable to the freshwater discharges. So whatever spat settlement, whatever juvenile oysters are there, they may be in jeopardy. And also remember fish. Fish spawn during this time. If you've got all these fertilized eggs in the water column and you dump all this freshwater outflow, you've just kind of wasted a whole generation of finfish species too. So we're at a real critical time. And again, these pollution aspects like biosolids are real important, getting projects done so we move water south, but also going upstream to the source of these problems, which are upstream of these canals and into these farm areas, and work with those guys to retain and detain that water before it comes out is a better method than just waiting for it downstream and trying to wait for a big regional project to be built. So all these TMDLs and all this stuff is not going to work unless we go upstream and find those pollution sources and stop them at the source of the problem. So appreciate your input.
Indian River Keeper?
Anything left to keep?
We gathered, members of the community gathered to share stories and to honor Lace Latuna, who passed away last month. Lace is somewhere between Maggie Burchella and Marjorie Stoneman Douglas for our lagoon. We today have the Savannah State Park and the Inlet State Park in Fort Pierce as a result of her and her work in the early days of the conservation lines of St. Lucie County. It was a tragic thing to lose her. She had a stroke, a health degenerated over a couple of years. It was painful. She was surrounded by her family. They held hands and sang. And, it was a family passing. Something we don't get to see very often anymore. So, in honor of that, I would like to propose to this group that we start a movement to propose a name change to the Fort Pierce Inlet Park to Lace Latuna Inlet Park. And I think that this group here with 100 members would be a good place to make the start. There's a lot of organizations here that we can push this further and gather in other organizations up the lagoon and other water keepers from Florida. There's lots of clubs and stuff. She's very worthy, and to honor her name, Charles.
The St. Lucie County Conservation Alliance is also starting that very same movement, and we'd love to work together.
Let's do it, yeah.
Let's do it.
I've already spoken
with the Conservation Alliance. I've actually already started some legislative, this is gonna have to be legislatively
Right.
done. I know the process, I've been through it with the state parks. So I've actually been asked by Sherry to take the point for the Conservation Alliance.
Awesome.
And I'll be happy to work with you, Marty, but we will start that process. It will be a longer process. We're also gonna do the state park manager up there currently supports it. I'm gonna meet with the DEP state parks head shortly and make sure we've cleared the way as far as departmentally, and then we'll work with sponsors. I understand, once the November election's over, we'll know what our delegation is, and we'll have to start moving along those lines. But I've started planting those seeds already with some legislative people and staff that I know that will be there, that aren't up for election and whatever, so we're working on it.
Very good. I reached out to Senator Nelson's office and suggested that he show up there. And then I suggested to him that he call upon the Florida legislature and the Florida governor to support this, preempt our own people and just get it, put the pressure publicly on them to make this move. Dr. Grant Gilmore and Nathaniel Reed were two of the speakers. It was very elegant. It's hard not to cry. I went out and dropped hydrophones with Dr. Grant Gilmore. The week before, he had been up in the Northern Lagoon with Captain Alec Baricki, and they could find no trout. Grant said that he had a hydrophone at the Jensen Beach Causeway for 20-some years. That of all the lagoon, one of the best spawning places is in Jensen Beach, a couple miles on either side of the Jensen Beach Causeway. He was absolutely certain when we put out that he was going to find trout spawning underneath that bridge and around that bridge. And that was not the case. He was disturbed, horrified, mumbling under his breath, and all the time, he's been studying the lagoon since 1960. And to find no spawning trout whatsoever around the Jensen Beach Bridge is a cause for great alarm in his mind. So let's keep that in mind, that, some 9% of the discharges go north with every incoming tide. So, the pollution isn't just going out our inlet, it's also killing everything in Jensen Beach, and, that's where our trout, I've been fishing, off that causeway and stuff for 45 years, and you just can't catch a fish anymore, we got some of the best fishermen in the state of Florida sitting right here.
9 times in a
None of
short period of south.
the fishermen can catch any fish, even all the way up to Long Island.
So,
There's no trout.
What?
Okay.
So anyway, this is something that we just need to pay attention to. It's kind of a sad thing. On the water ambassador, I'm a pretty smart guy. I've been dedicated to clean water for a whole bunch of years. And when I went to that water ambassador course, I learned things. Think about it. Diane has worked really hard. It'll teach you about personal responsibility, which is where all of this starts anyway. It starts in our own home with our own decisions. So I highly recommend the Water Ambassador program that Diane used for putting forward. With that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Marty.
Wait, one more thing. I'd like to thank Ed for sharing his wife with our community.
Before we turn it over to a couple public comments, next month's meeting is June 28th. It's the daytime meeting, and tentatively scheduled Lieutenant Colonel Reynolds from the Army Corps of Engineers will be here.
What time?
11 a.m. It'll be 11 a.m. daytime. And is there any member comments before we wrap it up? We're 5 minutes over. Go ahead.
Where is we're due to this, the River Coalition meeting being held at 11 a.m. on June 28th? Here.
Right here. In this, we always hold the meetings here.
Just to mention, there was a River Save Our Water Summit, which was over in Naples there on May 11th. It was well attended by quite a few people. They had some great panels there and stuff too. It was really well done. There's a lot going on, and I'm glad that there are a lot of people here. Unfortunately, tonight too, the Martin County Conservation Alliance had a special meeting, open mic kind of meeting over in the library, so we're unfortunately in conflict with that, so hopefully we can kind of share that next time when they come.
Thank you.
Are you gonna reschedule and press dance?
No, we're gonna wait till next time.
Okay, thank you. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.